Greetings, my friend. Welcome back to another one of my videos to help you be fit and live free. And as the title for this video suggests, we're discussing weighted lunges today. How to do them in a much safer way to especially protect your joints like your knees and your lower back, and get much more effectiveness for building up bigger and stronger legs. Now, as always, the first step in ensuring we have the safest and most effective exercise is ensuring we have good range of motion and good tension control in the supporting musculature. Now, a lot of times when it comes to squat chain movements like lunges, we're looking at losing tension potentially in our hips and our calves as we get into a deeper range of motion. That's one of the reasons why the whole idea of don't let your knees get past your toes came into vogue years ago, is that recognize that a lot of people don't have good tension control in their lower body. So instead of actually helping people solve the problem, we just started telling people to do easier, lower grade exercises to accommodate their weaknesses. And that's why now you've got these ideas of what about knees over toes guy and stuff. Like, yeah, this is how we're supposed to be able to work. Our knees are supposed to go over our toes. That's how our ankle is meant to move, as well as our hips. So to warm up, we want to make sure that we're moving into a very deep position. My back knee is still on the floor, so I don't have any resistance on this leg, but I'm working on getting the tension in my calf and in my hips to a very high degree. It doesn't need to be as much tension as you can possibly hold. It just needs to be some tension. Remember, we're getting neural feedback all the time about how much tension is in our muscles. So if we're sitting here going like, I think my glutes are on, I don't know, how do I tell if they're on? Well, then the answer is no, or at least they're not on to a very high degree. Right now, I can contract all of my hip muscles, and it sure feels like they're on. I'm feeling that contraction, that burn. So practicing this as part of your warm-up, or just as a way to ensure you have that activation, means that you have tension throughout your entire lower body. Calves are on, quads are on, hamstrings are on, glutes are on. If they're not on, turn them on. It's the job of our nervous system to turn muscle on. Exercise does not work muscles. The exercise doesn't make them turn on. Your nervous system does that. The lunges are merely the application. So when we are assuming that the exercise is going to turn it on for us, well, now it's just passive activation, and we're leaving it up to chance on whether or not the force is going into the muscles or into the joints. So naturally, the next step is, can we get good activation and supportive tension under resistance? And for that, now we have basically starting off with our basic split squat. And again, this is a squat chain movement, which means hip to heel. Squat chain movements are all about getting your hip closer to your heel and then back. We don't want our weight 50-50. We want the weight to transfer forward, knees forward. And if you don't have the range of motion or the range of tension, don't worry about it. Just use whatever you got for range, and in time, your mobility will improve and your strength improves, and so will your stability and your resiliency in your joints. And as you're working on this, remember, a good rule of thumb is to envision that the angle of your shin and the angle of your torso are the same. So we don't want to be like so, because now this is putting a lot more forward pressure and I'm not having as much on my heel. But I also don't want to be here as well, because now I've got more stress potentially on my lower back, especially if I'm holding weights, and I'm not getting nearly as much range in my knees and my ankles, so that's going to compromise the range of tension and effectiveness of the exercise. So having awareness of angle of shin and angle of torso roughly the same throughout is key. So we have our split squats, and then we can upgrade to reverse lunges. Remember, when you're doing the lunge, you want as much weight as possible on this front leg. We don't want to feel like we're pushing off our back leg. You want to have basically a single leg squat. Lunges are squats, or at least they should be. And they're basically single leg squats with rear leg assist. So I've got as little weight and support going on with the back leg and ensuring I have full hip extension at the top. You don't want to just kind of come up into the old man pose kind of thing. Come all the way up, glutes, driving up with the front leg. And even with some of these adjustments, you may find that body weight itself is perfectly sufficient, which is great. But we have our reverse lunges, and then you can move into walking lunges where you're moving forward. So then once we start utilizing weights like dumbbells here, one of the great things about weighted lunges is you can really work your legs very hard without the need of a squat rack and a lot of heavy weight that can really bear down on your body. We can get a lot of work with relatively low loads because we're using leverage to work our muscles primarily, and the loads are supplemental. So as we start off with our reverse lunges, we still want to have the same technique. Thinking of hip to heel, knees coming forward, having a good solid pause to kill up momentum. Weight is still very much on my heel. You want to be hyper aware of if you're rocking your weight to the balls of your feet. You want to keep feeling like you're pulling into your heel to get those hamstrings on, and then driving up with your front leg. You want your back leg to do as little work as possible. Coming down nice and low, up and forward. Making sure you have a good, smooth technique. And again, angle of torso, roughly equal to angle of shin. That helps to get a lot more engagement in the hip as well. Be mindful, especially if you're doing walking lunges, with the tendency to scoop the dumbbells. When we scoop, we momentarily place a large amount of load on our lower back if we have a swinging motion. That can be particularly prevalent if you're using kettlebells, which have a lower center of gravity and are more prone to that pendulum effect. You can play around with having the weights higher, but then again, if you start to tilt forward, now you've got even more load on your lower back. So instead, think of shoulders down and back. That way, your back is more stable, engaging your lats. And when you step forward and then squat down, and then pull yourself up and forward. We don't want to have downward and forward momentum at the same time. You want to think more along the lines of step and squat and stand back up. So as you're walking forward, it's not a race. Step, squat, and then back on up. And that will ensure you have plenty of support in your back and your knees. I put a micro workout down below in the description to help you play around with this, as well as with the warm-up to help you dial in the muscle tension for safer and more effective lunges, as well as a link to my book, Progressive and Weighted Calisthenics, the foundation for using bodyweight training for building real muscle and strength. Best of luck in your workouts this week. Be fit and live free.